Imagine a world where a single invention never existed, a world where the explosive force that shaped modern construction, mining, and even warfare was never created. But before we step into that alternate timeline, we need to meet the man behind the invention that changed everything. Alfred Nobel was not just a chemist. He was a restless thinker, a businessman, and a man who believed that science could be used to transform the world. Born in Sweden in 1833, Nobel grew up surrounded by machines, experiments, and the booming world of industrial innovation. His father was an engineer who worked with weapons and explosives, and young Alfred inherited the same fascination. That childhood curiosity eventually led him to something that would make him world famous, incredibly wealthy, and deeply troubled. That invention was dynamite. But now imagine this. What if Alfred Nobel never invented dynamite at all? What kind of world would we be living in today? How different would our cities, our wars, and even our scientific legacy look if one of history's most powerful tools had never existed? Stay with this story, because where it goes might surprise you. And if you enjoy exploring the hidden turning points of history, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next journey. To understand what would change, we have to understand what dynamite really did. In our timeline, Nobel didn't invent explosives themselves. Explosives already existed. Gunpowder was ancient, and nitroglycerin had been discovered decades earlier. But nitroglycerin was so unstable that people saw it as a death sentence. It could detonate simply from being shaken, warmed, or even handled roughly. Nobel's breakthrough was finding a way to make nitroglycerin safe enough to transport, handle, and use on purpose. That creation, dynamite, became the backbone of modern industrial progress. Railroads, canals, highways, deep mines, and even the cities we live in were shaped using it. Dynamite made the impossible suddenly possible. Now remove dynamite from the picture. Imagine the year is 1867 and Alfred Nobel never discovers how to stabilize nitroglycerin. Maybe the experiments fail. Maybe he moves on to a different project. Maybe he never gets the idea at all. Without dynamite, the world enters a very different form of industrial growth. Mountains are harder to carve through. Railroads expand more slowly. Mining becomes more dangerous and less productive. Entire economies that relied on rapid expansion of infrastructure face delays of decades. The United States, for example, would not have laid coast-to-coast railway lines as quickly as it did. The mining boom that fueled Western expansion would have unfolded much more slowly. The large tunnels through the Rocky Mountains and the Sierra Nevada might not appear until many years later. Even major cities on the East Coast would struggle to build underground subways or water tunnels on time. Instead of rapid construction, engineers would be stuck using older, weaker blasting powders. These were less reliable, less powerful, and far more dangerous in their own way. So the modern world, as Americans know it, with its vast transportation networks and large-scale industrial projects, would lag far behind. But the story gets even deeper. Because without dynamite, the way humans fought wars might have changed as well. Although dynamite was originally designed for construction, it was quickly adapted for military use. Armies used it to demolish bridges, destroy fortifications, and reshape battlefields. Remove dynamite, and military technology slows down. The destructive power available to armies in the late 1800s becomes weaker. Certain types of early bombs, naval charges, and demolition strategies never develop on time. By the time the world approaches the First World War, nations would be missing some of the tools that shaped real history. The war might still happen, but the strategies and casualties could be very different. Some historians believe that later explosive innovations might still emerge eventually. But the timeline shifts years, maybe even decades. Yet the most unexpected change of all would happen not on the battlefield, not in a mine, not on a mountain, but in the world of science and culture. Alfred Nobel became incredibly wealthy because of dynamite. And late in his life, he became troubled by the destruction his inventions enabled. When one newspaper mistakenly published his obituary, calling him the Merchant of Death, Nobel was shaken. He began to think about the legacy he would leave behind. Because of that moment, he dedicated his fortune to creating something completely unexpected, the Nobel Prize, an award that celebrates peace, literature, science, and the best of humanity. Now imagine again that Nobel never invented dynamite. No dynamite means no massive fortune. No wealth means no Nobel Prizes. The world would lose one of the most meaningful honors ever created. Scientists who shaped modern physics, like Albert Einstein and Richard Feynman, might never receive the recognition that helped spread their ideas worldwide. Great writers, peace activists, and thinkers would miss out on the global platform that the Nobel Prize provides. Even American laureates like Martin Luther King Jr. or Malala Yousafzai would not be part of a tradition that inspires millions today. But the consequences of a world without dynamite go even further, shaping the very foundation of modern life in ways most people never think about. Consider the skyscrapers that define American cities. New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, these centers of modern culture rely on deep foundations. tunnels, and massive construction projects that depended on the speed and power of dynamite. Without it, builders would turn to slower, weaker blasting methods. Projects that took years might stretch into decades. Early skyscrapers might be delayed or designed differently, perhaps smaller and less ambitious. The iconic Manhattan skyline that symbolizes American innovation might rise later, look different, or fail to achieve the heights we know today. And the ripple effects would reach every corner of society. Think about mining. Dynamite allowed people to reach deep mineral deposits that powered the Industrial Revolution. Coal, iron, gold, silver, and copper became more accessible. Without dynamite, mining output dropped significantly. This means slower growth in steel production, weaker fuel supplies, and higher costs for raw materials. Industries that rely on heavy metals, railroads, ships, factories, electricity develop more slowly. American economic growth across the late 19th century might be weaker, affecting jobs, migration, and even the rise of major industrial cities. Places like Pittsburgh, Detroit, and Cleveland might never become the powerful industrial centers they once were. Dynamite also shaped the way humans altered nature itself. Think about the Panama Canal, Hoover Dam, and massive highway systems across the United States. These projects required carving through mountains, redirecting rivers, and reshaping landscapes on a massive scale. Without the explosive force of dynamite, some of these projects might not start until decades later, or they might require entirely different engineering methods. The Panama Canal, for example, might become so expensive and slow to build that the United States could lose interest, changing international trade forever. The Hoover Dam, a symbol of American resilience and engineering power, might not appear in the same form. Without dynamite, the world becomes less connected, less efficient, and far slower to modernize. But there's another side to the story. A world without dynamite might also be a world with fewer industrial accidents. In the real timeline, thousands of workers died in mines, tunnels, and construction sites because of lab mistakes, factory mishandling, or misfires. Without dynamite, some of these tragedies never happen. Families stay intact. Workers survive jobs that were extremely dangerous during the late 1800s and early 1900s. But in exchange for fewer accidents, progress slows dramatically. Technology advances at a more cautious pace. Society trades speed for safety. The changes also affect the environment.